Yes. So thank you. I would say two things. For those who didn't hear it, the question was, it turns out a lot of things that have been derided as conspiracy theories actually bear, more investigation, actually. And given that, how do you feel about the prospects of a free and fair election in November in the United States? I think is that a fair summation? So I would say first to the phrase conspiracy theorist, which I'm certain has got to be a staple of your news media given the selection of questions I just received. That it's worth knowing the provenance of that phrase. It comes directly from the Central Intelligence Agency, actually, 1964. In the aftermath of the murder of our president, John Kennedy, in November of '63, there was a very famous and entirely fake investigation into it called the Warren Commission, and people who were reading it critically noticed anomalies, like they didn't want to investigate the guy who shot the lone gunman. You're like, what? And raised questions about it, and that phrase, conspiracy theorist, entered the lexicon in my country, and it was designed to shout down and shame people who ask legitimate questions. Now, that said, there are a ton of wackos out there, and a lot of them show up at my house, and they're nice people, but they're clearly a little touched by the Great Spirit. That's all right. I mean, there are crazy people for sure, but there are also far more people who just noticed, like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And that's kind of where I started, like, well, what is that? Shut up, racist or conspiracy theorist or whatever, lone, mass shooter or whatever this chick called me. So I think the first step is recognizing that that's a control tool. Those are not the responses of someone who seeks an honest adult conversation with you where you sort of share evidence and arrive at consensus. That's someone who believes that he can make you shut up like you would by yelling at your dog so he can go do something awful without you interfering with him. That's the truth, okay? So anyone who uses the term conspiracy theorist is by definition discredited in my view. Why don't you address the specifics of the claim I'm making, no matter what it is? The second thing I would say is I've lived long enough and covered the news long enough to not discount anything. It doesn't mean every theory is true. I hear some wacky theories. But given what we now know about so many different things, how can I, in good faith, just dismiss something out of hand?